Think about your last 3 months. Not the big moments, the ordinary ones. The grocery run that cost more than you budgeted for. The medical bill that arrived 6 weeks after an appointment you thought was covered. The rent notice that went up again even though nothing about your apartment changed. Now think about all three of those things landing in the same month, at the same time, on the same paycheck. That's not a hypothetical for millions of Americans right now. That's just February. That's just March. That's just the month that's currently happening. And the people carrying that weight aren't people who made bad decisions. They're not people who lived beyond their means or ignored the warning signs. People showing up every day, paying their bills, doing everything they were told would be enough, and still finding themselves at the end of the month with nothing left and a growing balance on a card they never planned to need. Total credit card debt in America just crossed $1.14 trillion. More than 22 million households are spending over 30% of their income just on rent and utilities. And medical debt is now one of the leading drivers of financial crisis for people who had no warning it was coming. These aren't three separate problems. They're three forces working in the same direction at the same time against the same people. And when all three hit together, which is increasingly what's happening, the math stops working completely. This is what that looks like up close. Most people who carry credit card debt didn't plan to carry it. That's the part that gets missed in every conversation about this. The assumption is that credit card debt means overspending, vacations, restaurants, things people wanted but couldn't afford. Increasingly, credit card debt in America is survival debt. It's the grocery run in the third week of the month when the paycheck ran out but the refrigerator didn't. It's the utility bill that came in higher than expected and had to go somewhere. It's the car repair that couldn't wait because the car gets you to work, and without work, nothing else functions. These aren't luxury purchases. These are the basic costs of staying functional in a life that got more expensive faster than income could follow. And the balance grows, not because people aren't paying, because at an average interest rate above 23%, a minimum payment barely touches the principal. Think about that number for a second. 23% interest? The average household carrying credit card debt right now is sitting on a balance between $8,000 and $10,000. At 23% interest making minimum payments, that balance doesn't go down. It goes up every month, while the person carrying it is doing everything they're supposed to do, going to work, paying the minimum, trying to get ahead, and the balance keeps climbing anyway because the interest rate is designed to outpace the payment. Between 63 and 70% of American adults are living paycheck to paycheck right now. That includes people earning six figures. Because the issue isn't income at a certain level anymore. It's that the cost of maintaining a normal life outpaced what most incomes can cover. And when there's no buffer, when the month runs out before the paycheck arrives, the card goes in, not as a choice. That's how $1.14 trillion of credit card debt gets built, one ordinary month at a time. And credit cards are only the first pressure. There is a specific kind of financial devastation that has nothing to do with decisions. It arrives in an envelope, usually 6 to 8 weeks after an appointment, sometimes longer. It's the medical bill. And for millions of Americans, it is the single event that tips a manageable financial situation into one that isn't. Here's what makes medical debt different from every other kind of debt. You didn't choose it. You didn't swipe a card. You didn't take out a loan. You got sick, or your kid got sick. Something happened that required care, and you went and got the care because that's what you're supposed to do. Roughly 100 million Americans currently carry medical debt. 100 million people. That's nearly 1 in 3 adults in this country, holding a balance for healthcare they needed and received. The average medical debt balance sits around $2,000 to $3,000 for most households. But for households that experienced a serious event, a hospitalization, a surgery, an emergency room visit, that number climbs fast. And it stacks on top of everything else. The credit card balance that was already there, the rent that already takes too much, the grocery bill that already costs more than it used to. The medical bill doesn't arrive into a budget that has room for it. It arrives into a budget that was already stretched before it showed up. And here's what makes it worse. Medical debt doesn't behave like other debt. It arrives unexpectedly. The amount is often unclear for weeks or months after the event. Insurance coverage is complicated, and the patient frequently doesn't know what they actually owe until the bill lands. And the bill can be disputed, but disputing it requires time and energy and knowledge that most people don't have, so it sits. And while it sits, it affects credit. It affects the ability to rent, the ability to borrow, the ability to access the next thing that might actually help. One health event, one bill, arriving into a budget that was already carrying more than it could hold. That's not a failure. That's a trap that 1 in 3 Americans is currently sitting inside. And then on top of all of it, the rent is still due. Rent was supposed to normalize. That was the expectation when inflation started cooling. Prices had spiked, supply chains had disrupted. Things would settle, just not back down. The national median rent for a one-bedroom apartment right now sits at approximately $1,500 a month. That's the national median, not New York, not San Francisco, the middle of the country. $1,500 a month is $18,000 a year before utilities, before renter's insurance, before a single other bill. To keep that within the standard 30% affordability threshold, a solo renter needs to earn around $60,000 annually. The average renter earns significantly less than that. And rent isn't the only housing cost that moved. Utilities went up. Renter's insurance went up. In many markets, the cost of simply having a place to sleep has increased across every line item simultaneously. So when rent takes 35 or 40 or 50% of a paycheck, which it now does for more than half of all American renters, what's left has to cover everything else. The groceries, the car payment, the credit card minimum, the medical bill sitting on the counter, from what's left after rent, and for a significant portion of working households, what's left after rent isn't enough to cover all of those things. The savings don't get funded. The credit card balance grows. The medical bill gets pushed to next month. And next month arrives with the same rent, the same minimum payment, the same bill on the counter, and slightly less room than the month before. That's not one bad month. That's the shape of the year. And it's the shape of the year for millions of people simultaneously. Which brings us to what happens when all 3 of these things arrive at once. Separately, each of these pressures is significant. A household carrying credit card debt at 23% interest is in a difficult position. A household carrying unexpected medical debt on top of normal expenses is under real strain. A household where rent consumes more than 1/3 of income has very little room to absorb anything else. But these things aren't arriving separately. They're arriving together, into the same budget, on the same paycheck, at the same time. And when that happens, the math doesn't just get harder, it stops working entirely. A full-time worker earning $22 to $25 an hour takes home roughly $3,500 to $4,000 a month after taxes. Rent at $1,500, utilities at $250, groceries for a household at $600, car payment and insurance at $450, health insurance premium at $300. That's over $3,000 before the credit card minimum payment arrives, before the medical bill sitting on the counter gets addressed, before anything unexpected happens. There is no room, not for savings, not for emergencies, not for the next thing that goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. The car needs a repair. The kid gets sick. The hours at work get cut for 2 weeks. Any one of those things in a budget with no buffer doesn't just create a problem. It starts a sequence. The credit card covers the gap. The balance grows. The minimum payment gets larger. The room in next month's budget gets smaller. And the cycle tightens, month after month, without a dramatic moment, without a single obvious breaking point. Just a slow, steady tightening that millions of people are living inside right now without a clear way to name what's happening to them. This is what that is. This is why it feels impossible even when you're doing everything right. It's not one problem. It's 3 forces: credit card debt, medical bills, and rent, all moving in the same direction at the same time, all pulling from the same paycheck, all compounding on each other. The credit card balance grows because rent takes too much and groceries cost more than they used to, and the medical bill had to go somewhere. The medical bill sits because there's nothing left after rent and the minimum payments and the ordinary cost of getting through the month. And the rent doesn't come down. It just keeps taking its share, month after month, while everything else stacks on top of it. 1 in 3 adults in this country carries medical debt. Nearly 2/3 are living paycheck to paycheck. And total credit card debt just hit a record that has never been reached before in American history. These numbers don't represent people who made wrong choices. They represent people who are working full-time inside a system where the cost of a normal life has quietly outpaced what a normal income can cover. That gap between what life costs and what work pays is where all 3 of these pressures live. And until that gap closes, none of this gets easier. The bills will keep arriving, the balances will keep building, and millions of people will keep doing everything right and still ending up exactly here. If this connected with something you're currently going through, drop a comment below. More people are carrying this exact combination of pressure than anyone is talking about.